Lily, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me, who are you? Where are you from? And where are you based now?
Good question. So I'm Lily. I'm based in Brisbane, Australia. I am a lawyer by qualification with some qualifications in marketing, business and sports management as well. I'm a public servant here in Queensland, and I am married to a medical doctor who's at the beginning of his journey as well. We have 4 kids together, 2 big dogs, and we are about to face, 5 years of change. An opportunity.
Okay, you have just segued beautifully into why I am so excited to talk to you today, because you are a bit different to everyone else that I've interviewed on the podcast so far. And that is because you are at the start of your trailing spouse journey. So I was so thrilled when you came into my orbit that I get to actually catch someone right at the start, and that it's just, I'm really, really interested to sort of hear how you're feeling, hear how things have sort of got to this stage. And so I'm really thrilled. So thank you for joining me, because I'm really excited to sort of hear where your head is at. So first question, you've sort of alluded already to the fact that you might be a little busy, just saying, there's a bit going on.
Yeah.
Tell me, okay, at least give me some sort of framework of things. Give me, how old are all the kids? Let's give us a bit of a framework in which we're working.
Yeah, perfect. So I have 3 girls. The oldest is 4. The second one is 2, and the youngest is 1. We had 3 in 3 years and 1 month. Always planned to have 3, didn't expect them to be 3 in 3 years. While I had my girls, I finished my law degree and supported my husband through med school. So it's been wild. We live in the fast lane.
Oh my goodness, that is not what I was expecting that you were going to say. My goodness. Okay, that is even more bonkers than I first thought going into this conversation. Okay, that's crazy. Well done that you're even like functioning enough to have a conversation with me. Go you.
No, it's good fun.
Oh, that's good. Now tell me, what sort of medicine does your partner do?
So he is planning to become an orthopaedic surgeon. And for those medical spouses listening, they'll understand what we have ahead of us. Next year, he's ticked all the boxes you need to tick to be able to apply to become an orthopaedic surgeon. There's lots of boxes. And next year will be his first shot at the title. And he has 3 shots and you're out. And if it doesn't work, then we choose a different path.
Okay, so tell me, what do these shots include? Is this actually like having to sit exams and having to actually like get signed off? Is that what that sort of looks like?
Yeah, so it's a collection of there's a major exam, like a general surgery exam. This is the Australian system anyway. There's the general surgery exam. There's a couple of courses that they need to do, all paid for upfront out of pocket. And then the references from where you're working, you need to have a really good resume behind you to apply. And then you apply, you interview, and then you might get offered a place. It's not many places. The place could be here. We're in Brisbane, Queensland. It could be here in Queensland. It could be South Australia. It could be New South Wales. You put your preferences down, and you kind of form your career based on whether you get on that first go, second go, third go, 3 strikes. You've used your lives now. You didn't get on, or you did get on, and off we go. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, we're planning next year's, resume build. And Michael mentioned this hospital, and then he's like, and if not there, then maybe Cairns, which for those playing at home is 2,000 kilometres up the road. So,
fascinating.
In 6 months' time.
Okay, I was going to ask the timelines on things. So from now, you have he has the potential to get onto the program, and so your move will be in 6 months' time. Your first move potentially could be in 6 months' time. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, and that's a strategic move, yeah.
Okay, and so tell me then, what does life look like at the moment in your mind as far as preparing for this?
Okay, so we're hitting school next year. So I'm applying for schools here in Queensland, in our local community, for our first year of schooling for the oldest. And then I'm thinking, okay, if we're not here in Queensland or we're not here in Brisbane, we'll be up north? What would schooling look like there? What will my career look like? Because I'm a public servant. I work full time, so I want to continue having a career. What could I do up there with my skill set? What are my opportunities? How do I build my network to have that opportunity? And I think the great thing that's happening in the current climate is that it's truly a global world, and working from home doesn't mean working from home in Brisbane.
I see. So have you started going as far as like possibly looking and putting names down at schools in Cairns, or do you look at the list of being like, okay, these are all the potential options, and do you just go and start finding some schools in those areas?
I would be pretty set on the type of school. We're Catholic, so we'd be going for a Catholic primary school. I understand there's a great community of medical spouses up in Cairns. So if we were told in, August that you're going to Cairns in 2024, I'd be reaching out to that community saying, where do you live? Where's the hospital? What Catholic schools are in that area? And we would go down that path of starting prep there.
Wow.
Hopefully it's not Cairns, not that there's anything against Cairns, but I don't really plan to uproot the whole family if we don't have to, particularly at this juncture with young kids.
Yeah, interesting. So tell me then, what does it start looking like with work with you? Have you got the potential to sort of negotiate flexibility with your current job?
I do, yes. They're quite open to flexible work arrangements. The other thing that's probably relevant in my profession is wherever there's a major hospital, there's usually a courthouse. So I can transfer my skills to different communities in different regions. And I think that's the benefit of being a public servant, because there's both the Australian federal government and then there's the Queensland state government in our system. So there's two public employers where I can take all of my entitlements, such as leave, long service leave, things like that, and set up in a community wherever it happens to be.
I see. So you sort of touched on it briefly, that there is a sort of medical spouse network in Cairns, like one of the local, one of the potential locations. And for those of you listening from abroad, Cairns is in sort of far north Queensland, and like Lily said, it's 2,000 kilometres north of Brisbane, which for people like those living in Singapore is absolutely mind-boggling to think that that is like still one state, let alone one country, which is so crazy. Tell me, what does it sort of look like then, like social life-wise? Have you sort of started having a think about that?
Well, if we talk about, knowing people from your past, when my husband started as an intern at a local hospital here in Brisbane, he linked up with a doctor whose wife I went to school with. So that's 20 years ago here in Brisbane. And her and I had a conversation about her time in Cairns. And she said, when you move to new communities, the medical community will embrace you. You just have to find out who they are. And that led me to finding the Facebook group for Australian spouses. And there's this lovely community here in Australia where you can join if you're a spouse of the doctor, and they really embrace each other. We've had regular catch-ups here in Brisbane, and I often see people saying, oh, moving to Cairns, can anyone recommend daycare centres or schools or cleaners or babysitters? Or even also people talk about, oh, we're going to a conference down in Adelaide. Does anyone know great places to stay near the event? Or does anyone have a babysitter in the area that could help us so we can have a night out? And I think it's leveraging those networks and those connections. You really never know when people are going to come back up into your life, like my friend from high school.
Yeah, isn't that so funny? And that just, it's such a small world that doesn't even surprise me when I hear stories like that. People turn up all over the place. One of my friends from high school, when we moved to Singapore, she literally lived maybe, I don't know, a 15-minute walk away, and she'd been in Singapore for like 8 years. And so it was so fabulous that to sort of have someone, which was such a treat, that was like a really old friend as well, that lived so close, is such a special treat. Now, I'm always really interested to sort of like, again, what are you nervous about?
Oh, I think there's so much up in the air, and I'm an organised person. I have to be organised with young children and a career myself. I am nervous about stability for the kids. Is it better to be, a single wife with my husband working away, just keep our family in the village that we have here? Or is it better to have our family together somewhere else? And I really try and leverage people's lived experiences and take as much information as I can from those that have been there. My obstetrician has 5 kids. And I sort of said to him at my last appointment with my last child, what do I do? Do I follow him everywhere that he goes? And his advice to me was something along the lines of, if it's a 1 year within a couple of 100 kilometres, you stay at home in your village, you keep the kids stable. But if it's a 2 year in Cairns, then you go and you uproot and you keep the family unit together. But the medical community have answered this question multiple times, and they've said you just have to try each avenue and work out what works for you. So I'm nervous about how to keep my children grounded and developing well while still having a loving relationship and a good family unit.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's interesting advice too. I like that. And again, like you've sort of noted though, that it's such a personal choice with what, like I grew up with a father doing fly in, fly out work in the mining and construction industry. So he sort of was at home while we were in primary school. But then when my sister and when I went to boarding school, so my sister was still at home for a couple of years, but he was on a plane and sort of every 4 to 6 weeks would sort of come home, and he'd swing in via Sydney and say hi to us at school and then go home. And that was just the choice that our family made as far as sort of keeping it all stable, and for my mum's career and for her to sort of continue going. But it's definitely a choice that it's a challenging choice, and especially because a lot of the work he ended up doing, a lot of it was in Australia, but he worked in New Guinea and he worked in Indonesia and things, and it sounds all very exotic, but they were like on mine sites, so it's not particularly a conducive family environment, or I don't even think that it was an option a lot of the time as well. So
he couldn't drop into his office.
No, well and truly, especially one of the mines, he actually used to have to chopper into where he was. So
wow, how interesting.
Oh, so good. So tell me then, what are you thinking as far as, like, if your move is not to Cairns and it is interstate, what does that look like for you as far as sort of keeping your finger in the pie as far as like your professional network? Like, I know that you've got access to that, the medical side of things, but how do you do it that's, well, I shouldn't say that assuming that you're wanting to do this, but I guess asking for someone that's actually like, how do I find something that's mine and that is separate from the, you're already doing a really big thing, which is picking up life and moving to follow your husband's job, to then hang out with other people that are doing the same job and in the same space and things. Like, while I think that is such a beautiful opportunity and such a great thing as well, I can see how it could have the potential to be almost claustrophobic, or a bit like, okay, is this all we talk about and only the people that we see? Like, have you sort of considered as well, like, what does it look like for your professional network and for you being able to do stuff that's Lily centric?
I love this question because I've got 2 recent examples to give you. The first one is, I come from a big family, there's 4 of us, and one of my sisters works for an education company. The headquarters are in the UK. My sister has people that work for her based in the US and in the UK. She'll never lay eyes on them in real life. So I think it truly is a global world. And I think if you see it that way, opportunities will come. So I'm in the process of planning my own personal strategic direction. The Olympics will be in Brisbane in 2032, and that excites me because I've got my marketing and sports management degree. We've always said we will come back to Brisbane. That's our base. All of our families here. One of my other friends is in education too, and she said to me recently that the jobs of the future will be about doing multiple things. You won't just be with one employer for life. It'll be a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. So I'm thinking about what I want in 10 years, and I think I will structure that with some work for myself, whether that be my passion work, and then a couple of days doing, the working for someone else. What that looks like yet, I don't know, because this is part of the plan of thinking, what can I do and where can I do it from? But with that global mindset of what skills can I give to people that aren't just next door or within my city.
Love that. I don't want to be like a spoiler on another episode of the podcast, but I feel like this is just like a beautiful segue into some beautiful advice that one of the other guests that I've spoken to talks about, is that this concept of asking yourself, and I think, again, because you're right at the start, is that what do you want that 2, 3, 5 years to look like when you look back on it? Like, how do you want to look back on that time? Do you want it to be something that you're like, I just got through it and existed and just wrote those years off as, just chalk them up to experience, and that, it was okay and we just sort of bumbled through? Or do you want to retrain, or do you want to, tap out of work for a while and hang out with 4 kids? And that actually sounds like hell on earth to me, no offense, but
I work full time. Yep, I get it.
But I think that that's such a beautiful thing to be able to think about, is that what you want that time to look like, and how you can use it to prepare for that next stage or that next sort of line in the sand with where you're going to be life-wise. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it helps with my journey, because I think it's all doctors, but most doctors who specialise, they end up doing 1 fellowship year overseas. So there is something tangible there for me to go, okay, you need to set something up so that year that you're overseas, you've got something. Because I'm all about that, reflecting and having my own personal journey. I was a long time Lily before I was a wife and a mum, and I want to keep that spark alive, because I think, it's an opportunity to tap into my passions more so than just being miserable in the moment, going, oh, I'm in a new community and I don't know anyone. But I'm an extrovert, so that helps.
Yeah, and look, it's coming from another extrovert. I often think that a change of scenery is the best thing ever. People,
I know.
What is wrong
You're
with
mad?
Yeah, you love moving. I'm like, I love moving. I love getting to meet all the people, because I'm really good at collecting friends, and I don't move on and leave them. It just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And one of my best friends lives in Melbourne, and I haven't seen her for a few years because of COVID, but we talk almost every day, because I don't think you need to be next door neighbours to have a community.
And you said it's a global world. It's so it's the technology is there. The fact that we can do this across time zones and talk to people and build networks and things that way, I think is super interesting. And I think that that's such a real positive and just such a different experience. You sort of think of trailing spouses 30 years ago, that was a really different experience, a really, really different time. And I think I'm sure you speak to people that would be it was a heaps better time. There was actually, you could have a break from your life in another place, and you could reinvent yourself, and you can do all of these things. And I think you still can do that. But I think that for those that would have found it challenging regardless, having this access to the technology and being able to still have a career or change careers or rethink what work looks like for you and things moving forward, I think is just such a positive thing for the time that we're living in, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
So as far as the timelines and the bits and pieces, if your husband doesn't get onto the program first, do you continue on in this sort of strange limbo? And is there a timeline between he has to wait before he can do, what are the sort of staggered, if it's not in 6 months, is it 12 months or is it 18 months, or what does it sort of look like? And so and then on top of that, then what does that do in your headspace as well?
So I think at the moment, the next step is, where does he go next year? And that move is likely to be for 2 years. And we are thinking it will be here based in a Brisbane hospital. If that doesn't happen, it's that move, but it's still for 2 years. Then we just play this game of trying to get on the program. Once he's on the program, I understand it's 5 years and you're at the mercy of the program gods, and you move where you're told to move. You do some rural, you do some major centre sort of work. And we talked about how big Queensland is as a state here in Australia. So we could be moving all over this state. Whereas if he got onto the orthopaedic training program down in Adelaide, it's a much smaller state. So the moving would look different. So we really can't plan too far ahead, because we really don't know what the goalposts look like or even what direction they're in. It's just trying to make those good decisions about schooling and stability and keeping the family unit, you know, doing well, to navigate those changes that are coming. You really don't know. You wouldn't want to be someone who doesn't like change in this situation.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question I was going to ask, was around, do you think that there is benefit to having so much lead time to a move, or is there some days that you're like, oh man, I wish that we just had 3 weeks notice and we just sort of packed up in a frenzy? Have you sort of thought about what the timelines sort of are like?
I like that idea of just packing up and going. And I often think that, you know, when the going gets tough or you get a bit sick of the mundane monotony of a big city, I'm like, let's just pack up and move. Let's get out of here. I've lived overseas. I've lived in Germany and I've lived in Canada. So I've got the benefit of knowing that moving overseas is really exciting and really fun, or moving to a new place. I'll be content or feeling a lot more comfortable when and if he gets on the program, because then we'll have a little bit more control and we'll know what we're doing. It's this limbo of spending a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy trying to get ready to hopefully get on, that is the concerning part. That's the bit that you think, oh my goodness, the time and money in it. And he was a late starter. He didn't find medicine till his mid to late 20s. So time is of the essence, versus being someone who finished school, went straight into medicine. So I think I'll sleep well the night, fingers crossed, he gets on a program.
Yeah. Oh goodness. I tell you what, I am not envious of you. I'm sorry to say. I'm a planner, but I am quite keen on the quick turnarounds of things. And sort of once I've made the plan, when I then have to sit and wait for the plan to come into fruition, I'm like, oh God, this is so annoying.
Yeah, I get that. I can throw up another obstacle that we're facing. So we bought a little house here in Brisbane that was 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom. We renovated it to be 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom when we had the oldest. Then we had 2 very quickly. So we live in a teeny tiny house. What do? Do you keep living in a 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom house with 5 of us, waiting to know what you're going to do next? Do you buy the next house? It's just this, we're lucky to own a house. I don't take that for granted, but it's like, what do? We might not be here in 6 months.
Yeah. Limbo is the perfect way to describe where you're sort of sitting at the moment. That's it's an exciting but really sort of challenging place to be.
Yeah. But I see it as opportunity and I see it as exciting, because it means, you know, the best days of our lives haven't happened yet.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm trying to think, we had probably about 6 months warning, I guess, with our move, which I found was good. And we got to actually sort of determine a bit with the timeline with ours. Because my husband had been already, it was a promotion, so staying with the same company. And his boss in Singapore had said, look, things are still pretty hairy over here. So how about you just get here within a 12-month period? And so then we were able to say, okay, let's line it up with where's going to work with the kids with school. So we chose for them to finish off term 2 in Australia, to come here for the summer holidays in the Northern Hemisphere, where we could then be tourists in our own town. And we really got to get around and things. And so by the time the girls started school in August, they were like sort of had their groove and were like, oh, okay, I get this place. Rather, we were so lucky that it wasn't sort of like a, okay, you're going next month, the kids are coming in halfway through a term and those sorts of things, which in an expat scene like Singapore, that wouldn't have been a major, but I think those are the things that are a bit trickier when you're, say, moving to a smaller place in a place like Australia, or things like, you know, the new kid is a new kid as it is, but let alone if they're coming halfway through a term, or those sorts of things can be a bit more challenging. But
Yeah.
it's that was good that we had that thing. But actually, do you know what? We did a move really quickly as well. My husband got a contract as a player coach playing rugby when we moved to Scotland, and it was like, okay, you've got to be here in 2 weeks. So he resigned and like literally had to go and get his working visa and things, and then he left, and I was teaching at the time and finished the school term, and then off we went. Like it was
Pack up and off you go.
Yeah. And so that was to be honest, it actually, I was excited and things, but I fell in a heap, was sick as a dog when I actually landed. It was just like, oh my gosh, that 6 weeks of mayhem and packing a house up and selling cars and just doing all of these things. I was like, yeah, sick as a dog. So there's definitely like pluses and minuses to doing it both ways.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited for you. Like I said, I'm not envious of this limbo life that you're in, because I see the house situation. I can see that's a really challenging thing, especially with housing the way it is all over the world. It's not as if, you know, it's not just that easy to go and, you know, find a serviced apartment that we can go into for 6 months with a monthly sort of, we just need it for an extra month, like that just is really hard to find now, if at all. So it's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm
really excited for you and your family, and it's like it's really cool. It's really an exciting time, and I'm thrilled that you're excited. Have you sort of like, where's the kids' headspace?
We haven't really spoken too much about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you don't want to get their hopes up or give them information that won't make sense to them. So we kind of don't speak about it around them. It's only the oldest that would really understand anyway. She knows the school she will likely be going to next year. We've done the interviews and all of the little things you do to get kids ready for school. The thought that she won't go there, to me, that would be hard to explain to her in 6 months. So you think, oh, do I stop talking about it? What do I do? Yeah, fortunately, the 2-year-old and the 1-year-old, they're too little. They really don't get it. I think it would be harder if they were like, if the youngest, I would be more nervous about traveling with little children or moving with really little children. Yeah, mine are little, but I more power to the mums that move with like newborns and things like that. That would be really tough. But I think the kids are resilient.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned, that they just pick up and move.
Yeah.
And
I moved an 8-year-old and ruined her world, apparently. So.
Oh yeah. Mums do that though, right? My mum ruined my life many times. Now she's excellent. I love her. I do love her. But what do you do though, right? She'll look back on this. I got to these amazing things. I lived in Singapore. It was wonderful. She just doesn't know, may not know it yet.
She has well and truly got her groove, and she actually has said to me since, like, oh, do you remember how I was nervous and didn't want to come? And I said, yeah, I know. I remember what you said to me. You're like, I know that you said that I will love it, and yes, it's scary at the start, but I will love it when I get here. And she's like, I do love it here. So it's good to run her over. But it was telling the kids was actually quite interesting, in that, like, we sort of did a bit of the same. We sort of didn't really talk, and then we did, and then we sort of said, look, this looks like it's going to happen. And again, the frustration of having like a human that actually has feelings and can articulate them. She was like, well, why didn't you ask us about what we wanted to do? And I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because they've got so much choice in this day and age.
Yeah.
And they're consulted on a lot of things, except for major moves overseas.
Yeah. And that was ended up being the line. Well, sorry, we're the parents.
Yeah.
Like, you can voice how you're feeling and I will acknowledge your feelings, but I'm sorry, they're not actually going to play into the decisions that we're making.
Yeah. And all I can think of, I mentioned that fellowship year where you go overseas, most doctors go overseas for the year. I'm living for that year.
Yeah.
Like Michael mentioned going to France, and I was like, yes, let's go to France. Should I start learning French now? Like, that would be fun.
That in itself is a really cool thing. And I think that if there's like goals with things, or you know, that there's a carrot dangled with something like that, I think that that's such a fabulous thing as well. And you can be like, again, looking back, what does this 5 years look like? Well, I learned French, and
Yeah, exactly.
we didn't actually end up in France, but like, I can now speak French, and I'm really fancy when I order my coffee and croissant at the cafe.
But exactly. And then I think of the kids and I'm like, oh, in 5, 6, 7 years, however long it is, I'm going to be traveling with kids that will really remember it. And
Yeah.
how many kids get to say they lived overseas for a year in their youth? Like, I didn't get to. I think my first trip overseas was as an adult to New Zealand over the ditch.
Yeah.
So the opportunities my kids will get from this, they just don't know them yet.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Well, good luck. I really look forward to hearing how it all goes. Maybe we should have you back once you get moving, and we should interview again and see like how it's all turned out.
I would love that. 2 years time, I reckon we can have a catch up and I can tell you where we are.
Oh my gosh. Okay, watch this space, listeners. We'll pencil it in the diary.
I love that. That would be great. Thank you so much for having a great podcast too.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And it was really interesting to sort of hear how like your brain is sort of processing this whole impending move and relocation and all of the things that go with that. So good luck with it all.
Thank you so much.